Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to thank all the members who have spoken, those, of course, who have spoken in favour of this particular motion. So there's quite a lot to respond to, but I think a lot of it, in fact, has already been done so by the ministers and the speakers from this side of Parliament. It would appear, if you were to analyse what the opposition is saying, firstly, they seem to be driven by election imperatives. That's one issue. The second argument they had was because we've been giving guarantees to FDB year in, year out, therefore we should stop giving them guarantees. The third argument is that because the overall debt of the country is high according to them, therefore we should not give any more guarantees because it builds up contingent liability. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, if I could also then, and of course there's a lot of inconsistency in what they've been saying, comparing Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday. If I could just address all of them really quickly, sir. Honourable Nawaikula said that we could have had a mature discussion if we were giving all the information. I mean, I think that's the last person who should be talking about mature discussion. Sir, I informed the business committee when we had the meeting last week that there would be an FDB guarantee. I did inform the business committee, and the members of the opposition were there. It is on them if they did not go back and tell their members. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point I'd like to make, the form in which we have presented this motion, we have adhered to the standing orders as we've done in the past. We gave our notification of this particular motion on Monday, 48-hour notification. That's why it's being presented today. So it's not any sort of, quick draw McGraw sort of situation here. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point that I'd also like to make is that if I could just address the FDB internal operational matters. This FDB saga recently started off, Senator Rondrondo, when Saud Minam, who's an international banker, ANZ manager, was appointed. He condemned his ethnicity, his religion, and used all of that. I thought it was extremely shameful approach. And this is, unfortunately, underlying premise and arguments of Sodelpa and some of the other people outside this parliament. They do not look at the credentials of the person and what he or she can bring to the organization and how well the organization can do. The other point I'd also like to make, Mr. Speaker, sir, they highlighted about the person who's bought Pullman. Now, they said, oh, his honorary counsel, Honorable Prasad, as usual, he watches too many C-grade Bollywood and Hollywood movies, conspiratorial theories. It is, of course, tenders were called, sir, and the board then chooses on the basis of the tender and the best price they can get. Every single impairment, bad debt, etc., is presented in the FDB reports, in the audited accounts, and you can get access to the information. Mr. Speaker, sir. The other point, Mr. Speaker,
I think you're all aware that
regarding
we do live in a
issue that was raised about Marriott, the outstanding monies that Honorable Prasad talks about. This is the deal that was done under the previous government with Vuksic and Boric. That agreement was not done properly. It is a legal issue, and as far as government is concerned, somebody did a deal. And I'll tell you why there was a deal, sir. The deal was, Honorable Ngavoka talked about syndicated loans. There was actually a syndicated loan. The main financiers of the Marriott were FNPF and FDB. So here was a much touted foreign investor bringing in money, but the bulk of the money was actually provided by the Fijian people through FNPF and through FDB. What was even more amazing was that the syndicated loan, the lion's share, was actually provided by FNPF, not FDB. I think FDB exposure from memory was about 60, 70 million. A few hundred million was FNPF, or if not more. But the manager of the syndicated loan was the former CEO of FDB. And as it was revealed subsequently, the former manager of FDB, in fact, had business interests in the development of Marriott. In that environment was that contract done. That's why, Mr. Speaker, sir, this information actually is available. It's available publicly also. And if you look at, he goes on about the laws then, if you look at the particular act and the rationale that was given as to why we actually had to do the act, similarly with Matandola, where FNPF participated with an undischarged bankrupt from Europe. Yet he was hailed as some great tourism developer. And if in fact that law was not put in place in Natandola, FNPF, Honorable Chale was involved in that board then, FNPF would have lost over $1 billion just in Natandola. Those laws had to be put in place to rescue FNPF and FDB at that point in time. That is history. They don't tell that. This is what we call obscurantism. They're trying to basically duck and weave in the process, trying to come up with all these narratives that actually don't make sense, nor they're half-baked truths. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point that I'd also like to make, sir, is that the issue about FDB and what is the focus of FDB. This law was put in place in the 1960s. The Fijian economy has substantially changed since then. We had a nascent tourism industry. Honorable Govt knows this. In the 60s, we only had about 2 or 3 major hotels, and that was it. The Fijian, Koralevu, maybe there were the 2 major ones. And then it grew. Of course, some of them benefit from it. You have organizations like Food Specific, George Patel and them, they got money to actually set up their factory, starting the manufacturing industry. Today we have, Mr. Speaker, sir, and none of the opposition have spoken about this. I spoke about the BPO outsourcing, the BPO. 3,000 jobs in 2 years, none of them have spoken about it. 100,000 jobs in 10 years. Shouldn't FDB be participating in that space if the need arises? Without necessarily neglecting agriculture. Honorable Seruratu actually highlighted the major point, and also Honorable Khoya, about the agriculture sector itself. We've been saying in this, in this space, the agriculture lease is only given for 30 years. So that's why it is high risk. You cannot really use the land as collateral. That's why commercial banks don't lend in that space. So FDB steps in. That is what has been happening, and these are systemic issues. They don't want to address it. Honorable Nawaikula also knows exactly what Honorable Seruratu is talking about, the non-renewal of leases in the 1990s when he was part of TLTB, together with Garikau. These are the historical, factual basis. Mr. Speaker, sir, today, I have the figures here. Today, sir, in the sugarcane industry, 43%, sir, of sugarcane farmers produce less than 100 tons. 43%. And, sir, 75% produce below 150 tons. That's it. That's it. You multiply that by $85 a ton, take out the expenses. That's how much money they make in a year. That's with the guaranteed price. Imagine if they had the world market prices. They'd be getting $60 a ton. That is the state of affairs of the sugarcane industry. And we have an aging population, etc. We're trying to get mechanical harvestation being done. The reason why most cane farmers still are cane farmers, because if they have a sugarcane lease, if they stop planting sugarcane, the lease will be taken away. Where will they go? Where will they go? They're going to live in some squat area between the Sori and Suva? That's precisely what happened when they did 50% of the leases were renewed in Vanuatu. That's why they're still hanging on. So they become a lot more vulnerable to politicians who want to use them as political fodder. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this. And they're extremely vulnerable. We, as part of Ministry of Agriculture, are trying to get them to diversify. This is the hardcore reality, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point I also wanted to make was that, and I'll get to the debt issue, even if you look at FDB in the past, sir, as Honorable Seruratu said, since its inception, FDB has always got government guarantee. And Honorable Kurindrani is absolutely on the wrong path. He thinks when there is a loan default by an individual customer, as Honorable Usamate pointed out, does not mean the guarantee will be called upon, because FDB does make some profit too. So when they lend, say, to George Patel, they may charge him 12.5% interest. When they lend to a farmer in Wainunu Bay to plant his dalo, he may be charged 3.5%. That's what you call cross-subsidization. If the Wainunu Bay farmer goes belly up, in other words, he can't pay his loan, it does not mean they come running to government and say, oh, we want the guarantee. Even when MCOL went belly up, this is the great supermarket chain that's going to be set up. Even when FDB facilitated $20 million to help the elites buy Class A shares in Fijian holdings, the guarantee was not called upon. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Gavoka should know this because we've had discussions on this. It was only the elites who actually got the loan. Maybe for everybody, but who got the loan? He didn't get the loan. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, that is the reality. And what really is quite, mind-boggling is that they don't want to discuss these issues and they try only to go back to a particular period in time, not wanting to address the legacy issues. Because you cannot address a fundamental economic sector or position in the economy without going back in time and why we are where we are today. Because of what? Honorable Biman Prasad, like a petulant imbecile, actually just stops as long as it suits his new master. The narrative must start from there. That's what happens. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point I'd like to make, there's been a lot of talk about ginger farmers, the cassava farmers and other people. Your excessive interventions goes to show you on weak ground. The ginger farmers, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the last 8 months has received nearly $1 million in loans. Honorable Rondro, note this, a lot of them are from Netasiri. Last 8 months, they received $1 million. There's a new package being put in place for ginger farmers in the next season, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other point that I also wanted to make was in respect of the debt situation. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it's critically important because they have harped on about it. I just wanted to, by way of contextualization, because the global pandemic has affected the entire globe. Debt to GDP ratio of a like country, like Fiji, Maldives, which is a tourism-based sector, debt to GDP ratio in 2019 was 78.3%. In 2021 is 137.2%. Bahamas, 59.7% 2019, 102.5% 2021. St. Lucia, 61.4%, 95.6%. Mauritius, 84.6% 2019, 101% 2021. Just to give an example of a large country, Japan, 235.4% in 2019, now 256.9%. Closer to home, New Zealand, 32% debt to GDP ratio in 2019, now 52%. Seychelles, 57.7% 2019, now 81.9%. Australia, 46.6% debt to GDP ratio 2019, now 62.1%. There's a whole list of other countries, Mr. Speaker, sir. My point being, by way of contextualizing it, is that Fiji is not the only country. And if you look at the debt situation in Fiji, Mr. Speaker, sir, prior to COVID-19, we were on a downward trajectory. They don't mention that. They don't mention that at all. This is what you call intellectual dishonesty. We have been on a downward trajectory, sir. And we were sitting at, Mr. Speaker, sir, at 46%. 49%, Winston came along. And then as a result of COVID, we shot through the roof. Obviously not of our making. But the point that I'd like to make, Mr. Speaker, sir, so is this. At the end of 2006, the debt to GDP ratio was 53.3%. It rose to 56.2% in 2010. Following this, Mr. Speaker, sir, the debt to GDP ratio is on a steady downward path, declining to 43.5% in 2016-2017. This was a decline of close to 13 percentage points in just 6 years. In just 6 years, it declined by 13 percentage points. Then, of course, we had TC Winston and many other natural disasters. And with additional borrowing, our debt to GDP ratio rose to 48.4% in 2018-2019. Still below 50%. Still below 50%. Mr. Speaker, sir, So pre-COVID, even though the nominal value of our debt had increased from 2.8 billion in 2006 to 5.7 billion at the end of 2019, the debt to GDP ratio declined from 53.3% to 48% under the Beni Marama government and the Fiji First government, sir. So why did the debt to GDP decline? Why? Mr. Speaker, sir, it's very simple. Because our nominal GDP grew much faster. So if the value of a GDP goes up, then obviously a debt to GDP will come down. This is the result of the 9 years of consecutive growth. They go on about the 3%. They go on, oh, only 3%. They only, no, but it's a fact. It's a fact. They go on about the fact that it's, oh, only 3%, but there is a direct result of it. Our GDP, Mr. Speaker, says the nominal value grew from $5.3 billion to $11.8 billion in the same period. That's a phenomenal rate of growth, sir. Absolutely. Mr. Speaker, sir, then of course we had COVID-19. Tax revenue fell by 50% on average every month. Every month. We lost almost $1.4 billion in 12 months in tax revenues. So in 2 years, we lost $2.8 billion in tax revenue. That's a fact. During the same period, we had other new non-inflows like budget support grants and divestment receipts. However, to maintain public expenditure, sir, at around $3.7 billion, which includes $500 million provided in unemployment benefit and other support measures, government had to borrow $2 billion in the last 2 financial years. Now, this is where the opposition is saying that we should not have borrowed. They're saying we should not have borrowed. I think somebody at the back said Dinao and all this, Mr. Speaker, sir. So basically, if we had not borrowed and our revenues had shot down and our GDP had gone down, that means we should cut expenditure by $2 billion. That's what they're saying. Don't borrow, cut expenditure by $2 billion. Live within your means, they say. Okay? That would have been disastrous. When I said not a bad idea, okay, let's see. Where would they have cut? Where would they have cut, Mr. Speaker, sir? Would they have cut civil service pay? Honorable Prasad that preempted that, Fiji Times article, 10%. I think Narumbe said cut it by 30%. We decided not to cut it. And guess what the civil service pay bill is? We pay the civil servants over $1 billion in salary, please. We pay the civil servants over $1 billion in salary every year. That's the cost of running the civil service, wages. Wages alone. Social welfare or poverty alleviation, $145 million. Free education, directly, 60 million. Tails and toppers, 150 million. Unemployment support, 500 million. Police budget, we gave them 184 million. Ministry of Health, 403 million. Education, 442 million. Sugar, 72 million. Would they cut the elections budget? Don't have elections? Electricity subsidy, food rations, access to GPs, market vendors' fees. Is that what they're saying that we should cut? We'd like the ordinary Fijian people to understand what the opposition is saying. The logic this afternoon they have said to us is that we will not guarantee the FDB loan because you should have cut back on the expenditure. And cutting back on expenditure, so we'd like the Fijian people to know that this is what we will cut on to save $2 billion. It's precisely what they're saying. Because they have not, at any stage, at any time, given any alternative. No feasible alternative. None whatsoever. Mr. Speaker, sir, and they talk about continuity. Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the things that this portrays, in fact, yesterday or today when some of the members of opposition were speaking, somebody texted me. They said, thank God they weren't in government. Can you imagine how they would run government in the COVID time? Because of the indecisive leadership. You had somebody saying no vaccination, somebody saying vaccination, somebody saying lockdown, somebody saying don't lock down. This is the kind of inconsistency and the indecisiveness. So Delpa is shattered in itself internally. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is what would have happened. We like the ordinary people, Mr. Speaker, sir, to understand what the opposition is saying. We would like all those people who've now received loans, micro, small, medium enterprises, large enterprises, that the loans they've got, where they're giving them financing for their working capital to pay wages, electricity rates, etc., to continue their business, these people don't want you to have that. That's what they're saying. It's precisely what they're saying. They don't want that cassava processor, the ginger farmers to get the loans. That's precisely what they're saying, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, they've talked about how ministers should get the pay cut. They've already got a pay cut, 20%. You all have got a 20% pay cut. Even if you cut your pay even more, you still get about $1 million. Not going to make a dent in the $2 billion that you're proposing to cut. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is this. If we had not injected those funds, with tourism in the decline, firstly, we would not have been able to provide those services. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, our foreign reserves would have been shattered. By borrowing more from offshore, we are allowing more foreign exchange to actually come into the country, so our foreign exchange is buoyant. As a result of that also, Mr. Speaker, sir, our liquidity is buoyant. So we are not scrambling around for money when the economy is now going to grow. They're saying, oh, how can you have these projected growth rates? Any imbecile, any person with fundamental knowledge of the economy would say, yes, we're starting off with a lower base. Yes, our GDP value has gone down. We've already said that. So when you are going to grow from that, it will be a much higher rate of growth. Anybody knows that. So tourism, if you shut down for 2 years and suddenly get 30,000 tourists on average every month, that is growth. That is opening up the economy. More people are getting employed. More boats from Denmark will go out. More people will sell their vegetables. That's what the growth is about. And they're questioning it. ANZ is saying 20 to 25% growth. Westpac is saying 11% growth. FDB is saying thereabouts the same. Our macroeconomic committee is saying 10%. Why are there so many variants? Because people don't know, because this is a 1-in-100-year event. And nobody has been able to predict that. And so we, Mr. Speaker, sir, have been prudent in the way about not just managing the finances, but also in terms of our planning, in terms of ensuring that the economy still keeps on turning over. With the 360, it's not only provided people some form of relief, but it put money into the system. And that's what you call managing an economy about, Mr. Speaker, sir. Not about some short-term political, gaff. Mr. Speaker, sir, if we had not done what we had also done, it would have meant the Fijian dollar would have had to be devalued. As it is, the commodity prices in the world is rising. I highlighted that yesterday. World fuel prices going up, wheat prices going up, freight costs are going up. If our dollar was devalued, sir, the cost of things would have been even through the roof by now, even more so. So again, Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to understand that this is the situation that we were in. This is the situation that we are in. And we need to be able to deal with it. And we have got a plan regarding it. And to now say, because of this, therefore we are not going to fund the FDB or give the support to the FDB guarantee, is completely short-sightedness. It's in fact irresponsible, almost negligible. It is actually negligent to do that. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've already highlighted one other point that I'd like to make, which seems to be also lost on the opposition. The recent loans that we have acquired, sir, the interest rates, JICA, 0.01%. IDA, 0.75% loan, sir. So when you have a long-term loan of 40 years, 10-year grace period, with interest rate at 0.01% and 0.75%, and inflation is much higher than that, you actually end up having nearly 60% of the loan as a grant. That's what happens. In fact, they're telling you gently, we are giving you a grant. They don't call it a grant, they call it a loan because they want you to still have some skin in the game. So we say, we charge you 0.01%. They don't understand that. They say, oh, debt. But what is the cost of the debt? What is the cost of the debt? This is the cost of the debt. This is why we like the reclassification in the World Bank. This is why we like the reclassification ADB, so we can get cheaper loans. So the loans that we acquire now to build infrastructure and make sure our economy progresses, in the future they don't have to pay much at all. That's the reality, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to now thank all the members, in fact, who supported this particular motion, sir. And we'd like to also wish FDB all the best and the team and the management for putting this together for us. Thank you.